So I'm Megan Nyes, a hearing officer with the State Water Board's Administrative Hearings Office, also known as the AHO. The AHO is conducting this hearing on the administrative civil liability complaint that the State Water Board's Division of Water Rights Assistant Deputy Director filed on January 15th, 2021 against EW Merritt Farms. This hearing is being conducted by Zoom web conference and is also being broadcast live on the AHO's YouTube channel. Today or tomorrow, we'll post files of this recording and the Zoom generated transcript to the AHO FTP site. There is no court reporter. The YouTube recording will also be available on the AHO YouTube webpage. If you are experiencing any difficulties, such as your screen freezes during the hearing, don't worry, we will stop and take a recess until everyone can rejoin. You can try restarting your computer, or you may also call us at 916-341-6940 and leave a message or send an email to the AHO at adminhearingoffice@waterboards.ca.gov. And this information is on page 9 of the notice of public hearing. AHO staff will be monitoring the voicemail and the email inbox. Assisting me today from the AHO are Skylar Anderson, Amy Blanc, Nicole Mullen, and Kyle Woolridge. So we're going to identify who's here today. So when I call on you, please unmute yourself, turn your camera on if possible, and state your name. So who is appearing today for the Division of Water Rights Prosecution Team?
Yeah, thank you, Hearing Officer Nyes. My name is Andrew Tariainen. I'm the attorney representing the prosecution team.
Okay, good afternoon.
It's Brian Coates. I'm with the senior with the Division of Water Rights Enforcement Section.
Hello, Mr. Coates.
And Lane Kang, Water Resource Control Engineer with the Division of Water Rights Enforcement Section.
Okay, great. Anyone else appearing today for the Division of Water Rights Prosecution Team? Okay. And then who is appearing today for the respondent, EW Merritt Farms?
Sarah Reed.
Okay, hello, Miss Reed. How do you spell your first and last name?
Sarahreid.
Okay, and it looks like you're appearing by telephone only today, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I do not know how to do Zoom, if you can believe that.
Well, that's okay. Telephone works great.
Thanks.
And is there anyone else who will be appearing from EW Merritt Farms today?
No.
Okay. And I don't see anyone else on the call who has identified themselves. And sometimes we have policy statements, but that doesn't appear to be the case today from anyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our process today. I will call on people to speak. So, and Ms. Reed, this is more for everyone else who is here appearing by video on Zoom, but the same, generally applies to you as well. Please keep your microphone muted except when you are speaking. This helps to minimize background noise and unnecessary interruptions. If you want to say something and I have not called on you, please raise your physical hand on screen or unmute yourself and speak. And Ms. Reed, the best bet for you is probably just to pipe up and say something, since we can't see you raise a hand there.
Yes.
If you need a break at any time, please do not hesitate to ask to take a break. We can have a short recess and then reconvene. This is not a court proceeding, so you do not need to say your honor. And I just ask that you can address me as Ms. Nyes and refer to each other as Mr. or Miss. I will ask Nicole Mullen from the AHO to share her screen, and she'll put up each exhibit that is being discussed. And while you're asking questions or providing testimony, if you want us to put up a different exhibit, then you can let us know. So because the prosecution team has the burden of proving its case, the PT will go first today. And before the prosecution team's witnesses testify, I will administer the oath to them. After the prosecution team has presented its witnesses, the representative for the respondent, so that's Ms. Reed, may also ask the prosecution team's witnesses cross-examination questions. Ms. Reed does not have to ask the prosecution team's witnesses any questions, and this is different from Ms. Reed's opportunity to present her own testimony, and that will happen after the prosecution team's witnesses have completed their testimony. When it is EW Merritt Farms' turn to present the evidence, I will administer the oath to Ms. Reed, and she may then testify. The prosecution team's attorney then may ask Ms. Reed cross-examination questions. And if it wants to, the prosecution team can offer any rebuttal exhibits and testimony. And if it wants to, EW Merritt Farms can offer exhibits and testimony in response to the prosecution team's rebuttal evidence. And after all the evidence has been submitted, the prosecution team and Ms. Reed may make closing arguments. Any questions so far? Okay,
No.
hearing none. So after that, the matter will be deemed submitted and my colleagues and I will prepare a proposed order, which by law we must complete within 90 days. And as we discussed in the hearing notice, we will prepare our proposed order under Water Code Section 1114, Subdivision C. We will transmit the proposed order to the clerk of the board for consideration by the 5 board members. And when we transmit the proposed order to the clerk of the board, we will transmit copies of it to all the representatives who are here today and to everyone who has signed up to receive AHO emails, and we'll post the proposed order on the AHO's webpage. So I'm now going to ask if there's any questions about process. Mr. Toriainen, any questions about how we're going to proceed today?
No.
Okay. And Ms. Reed, any questions about what I've discussed so far?
No.
Okay. And I just want to say, I understand it can be a little intimidating to go through a hearing like this where there's attorneys and we're on video, you're calling in by phone. So please, at any time, if you have a question, you don't understand something, please stop and ask that question. We want this to be a fair process for everyone and to make sure everyone has a chance to put forward their evidence and that they're able to be heard today.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am gonna ask Mr. Toriainen if he's ready to get started. If you have an opening statement from the prosecution team today, you don't need one, but this opportunity is yours if you'd like to offer one.
Yes, I do have a brief opening statement.
Okay.
I'm prepared to give it now.
Great. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Andrew Toriainen, and I represent the Division of Water Rights Prosecution Team in this matter. This is a failure to file case. The prosecution team alleges that respondent EW Merritt Farms failed to timely file its 2019 annual report of water use and diversion for license 4995, also referred to as application 012288, which was due April 1st, 2020, pursuant to section 929 of Title 23 of the California Code of Regulations. The prosecution team's witnesses, Brian Coates and Kang of the Division of Water Rights, will show in their written statements and in their summary presentations that the respondent has been the record owner of license 4995 at all relevant times here, and that the division uses various public outreach methods to remind water rights holders of their diversion and use reporting obligations, including sending pre-deadline notifications directly to the respondent here using the contact information that was then on file, that the respondent received post-deadline warnings that they needed to file their 2019 report, that the respondent did not file its 2019 annual report until shortly after the division issued the complaint that's at issue here, that the respondent's 2019 annual report was overdue by 289 days as of the day the complaint was issued. Water Code Section 1846 provides for administrative civil liability of up to $500 for each day that a person or entity is in violation of State Water Board regulations or license terms. Based on 289 days of violation up to the date of the complaint, the statutory maximum penalty here under Section 1846 is $144,500. However, the prosecution witnesses will show that when considering the factors required under Water Code Section 1055.3 and the same factors under 1848D, the proposed penalty of $2,000 is appropriate. Specifically, the witnesses will discuss the following about the statutory considerations. Regarding the extent of harm, the witnesses will discuss how the respondent's failure to file their annual report harms the Water Board's ability to orderly and efficiently administer the state's water resources. That the board needs timely and accurate information about water use and demand to administer rights and manage supply, particularly during times of drought. Regarding the nature and persistence of the violation, the witnesses will describe how the division goes to great lengths to publicize the reporting deadline and to encourage right holders to comply. They'll show that the respondent ignored all of the division's notifications and warnings until after the complaint was issued. Regarding length of time, again, the witnesses will discuss how the respondent was 289 days delinquent as of the date of the complaint. Regarding the corrective action, the witnesses will describe how the respondent filed their annual report very shortly after they received the complaint. And regarding other considerations, the witnesses will discuss how $2,000 here, the proposed penalty, is the equivalent of 4 days of violation out of 289. And they will discuss how this is the minimum amount necessary to deter future noncompliance by the respondent and by potentially similarly situated parties. That concludes the prosecution team's opening statement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Reed, would you like to share any opening comments or any kind of opening statement, or would you like to wait until after the prosecution team's witnesses have completed all their testimony and we sort of turn to your case in chief?
I have just a couple of short statements that maybe would be best towards the end. In my opinion, and I'm not going to say that I'm not at fault for this violation, but there has been a mess up with the address there. The mail was not coming to my business office.
Okay.
All along, I had called and talked to, and I don't have those notes in front of me right now.
Ms. Reed, that sounds like the perfect thing to discuss when you are giving your testimony, once I swear you in,
Okay.
once you're under oath, but that would be the perfect time to do that. This is a time to just share any kind of arguments about your position. You kind of talked about them a little bit, but we can actually wait until you're giving a longer explanation for your
Okay,
testimony.
that's fine.
Okay. Great. So I think we're going to swear in the prosecution team's witnesses now. So Mr. Coates, can you please go off mute and please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. And then Mr. Kang, I'm going to swear you in as well. So Mr. Kang, would you please go off of mute and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. Mr. Toriainen, I wanted to return to you and ask about exhibits before you have your witnesses testify. So on May 18th, you uploaded to the AHO FTP site exhibits PT1 through PT9. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then did you also mail paper copies of these exhibits to the respondent?
Yes, we did.
Okay, great. Ms. Reed, considering that you're appearing by telephone today, did you receive these exhibits? And Mr. Toriainen mailed them last week, so I don't know if you've received them yet, but I'm wondering if you've
I do not have any exhibits. I just have the notice of hearing and the the new hearing start time and correspondence quite a bit prior to that. I haven't received anything recently.
Okay, so the exhibits are available online, and they have been posted for a week, and then the paper copies of the exhibits should be arriving shortly. So for today, it's a little bit difficult because we will be discussing exhibits. We will describe them, and since you have some of the correspondence, you mentioned having some correspondence, we'll do our best to, I don't know if do you have that in front of you, kind of all your papers for this matter?
Yes.
Okay. So we will describe what we have. We're going to be reading it aloud, and we'll just proceed from there. So,
Okay.
Oh, yes. Okay. So Mr. Toriainen, I'll turn the floor over to you. I'm going to give you a maximum of 30 minutes for your witnesses to summarize their testimony, and you can proceed with your witnesses.
Thank you. I'll turn it straight over to the witnesses, Mr. Coates and Mr. Kang, and ask that we put on the screen Prosecution Team Exhibit PT9, which are the slides.
Okay. So Ms. Mullen, and you can just ask Ms. Mullen directly, but I'll ask her this time.
Okay.
Ms. Mullen, could you post PT9, please? And Ms. Reed, these are presentations, the PowerPoint presentation that the prosecution team submitted as part of their evidence. And it has 12 slides. So, okay, please begin, Mr. Coates.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Coates, and I'm a senior engineer within the enforcement section of the Division of Water Rights. My testimony today will be in support of the administrative civil liability complaint issued to EW Merritt Farms GP on January 15th, 2021. My written statement is Prosecution Team Exhibit PT7. Next slide, please. California Code of Regulations under Title 23, Section 929 requires water right license holders to submit annual use reports by April 1st of the succeeding year. Failing to comply with the reporting requirements is enforceable through Water Code Section 1846. An annual use report submitted on time is valuable information allowing the division to make more informed water availability determinations and to determine if shortage notices are needed, such as the current drought. EW Merritt Farms submitted the 2019 annual use report on February 2nd, 2021, 10 months after the April 1, 2020 due date. Next slide. The purpose of the Fail to File Enforcement Project is to acquire water use data for availability determinations. While not required, the division undertakes extensive outreach using a variety of communication methods to obtain reporting compliance. Every year, the division sends out a reminder letter to the address on file with the division, detailing the reporting requirements and due date. Throughout the year, both preceding and following the due date, the division will send emails, tweets, letters, and sometimes postcards to encourage voluntary compliance. Should compliance not be reached, the division follows a progressive enforcement path, beginning with the notice of deficiency. The following outreach and progressive enforcement was undertaken for the 2019 reporting year. Next slide. Here is a copy of the February 21, 2020 reminder letter sent to EW Merritt Farms GP. This letter can be viewed as outreach, since it is required, and also as the first step in a progressive enforcement strategy. This is Prosecution Team Exhibit PT1. Next slide. Here are two emails sent on May 21st, 2020 and October 2nd, 2020 to all those parties subscribed to the division's reporting subscription service. The reporting subscription service is free of charge and available on the division's webpage. These are in Prosecution Exhibit. Next slide.
Excuse me, this part of it is cutting out pretty badly.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reed. I was having a little trouble, Mr. Coates, also understanding. Ms. Reed, would you like Mr. Coates to repeat the last sort of portion of his testimony again?
The portion of the emails being sent out, I don't recall receiving any emails. So
Okay.
apparently I'm not on the email list.
Okay, Mr. Coates, could you just repeat what you said about the emails, and then hopefully your connection is a little bit smoother.
Sure. So on slide 5, I have two emails that were sent on May 21st, 2020, and also on October 2nd, 2020. And these were sent to all the parties that were subscribed at the time to the division's reporting subscription service. And I just wanted to note that the reporting subscription service is free of charge, and it's available for anyone to sign up on the division's webpage. And these emails are documented as Prosecution Team Exhibit PT2.
Thank
You
you.
okay now? Okay. And on slide 6, And so here are two separate tweets, which are separate and apart from the emails that were sent prior to the January 15th, 2021 ACL complaint. The first was sent on October 5th, 2020, and again on January 14th, 2021, a day before, and it's documented in Prosecution Team Exhibit PT2. Go to slide 7, please. Here is a copy of the June 1st, 2020 Notice of Deficiency sent to EW Merritt Farms GP. This is Prosecution Team Exhibit PT3. Please note the text in the letter indicating a complaint will not be issued if the division receives the report before the complaint is out. EW Merritt Farms GP had over 7 months from the notice of deficiency to submit before the complaint was issued. The division also provided telephone assistance through our as well as an email service. I'm going to now turn the presentation over to Kang, who will provide additional details of the reporting complaint. Slide 8.
Thank you, Brian. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Kang, and I am a water resource control engineer within the Division of Water Rights Enforcement section. My written statement is Prosecution Team Exhibit PT8. This slide highlights the diverter's violation in simplified form. After repeated attempts to remind and encourage the diverter to comply, as Brian showed in the previous slides, the division was compelled to issue the administrative civil liability complaint 289 days after the reporting deadline on January 15th, 2021. It was only after issuance of the complaint did the diverter file the 2019 report. Next slide, please. This is part 6.4 of the prosecution team's exhibit PT6. It is a query of the diverter's water right license 4995 from the Electronic Water Rights Information Management System. Specifically shown here is the party list denoting the ownership history of the water right with the division. The first row of the party list table identifies EW Merritt Farms GP as the primary owner, mail receiver, and effective from the date of December 10th, 2016, with no ending effective to date, indicating that the ownership is currently active. Next slide. This is a query of the reporting history for the diverter's license from Prosecution Team Exhibit PT5. Shown are a list of all submitted electronic reports of licensees for the diverter's license. This exhibit shows that the 2019 report was received on February 2nd, 2021, 307 days after the April 1st, 2020 due date, and 18 days after issuance of the complaint. It also shows that the reports for the years 2011, 2013 through 2016, 2018, and 2020 were also received on the same day. Next slide. Due to the nature of the diverters violation and the significant expenditure of state water board resources used to compel the diverters compliance with the reporting requirement, the division recommends a liability of $2,000. I will now turn the presentation back to Brian Coates, who will discuss the 5 considerations in imposing the penalty. Next slide.
Okay. When determining the amount of any civil liability, Water Code Section 1848 requires that we address the following items: harm, nature and persistence, length of time, corrective actions, and all relevant circumstances. Under harm, the diverter's failure to provide the annual water use report undermines the division's ability to use current data, which is needed to make confident availability determinations for permitting, as well as curtailment notices during drought periods. Enforcement of the reporting requirements provides continuous messaging to the public that their water use data is important for statewide water allocation decisions. For nature and persistence, the diverter failed to file their 2019 report until February 2nd, 2021, despite numerous outreach methods undertaken by the division, including tweets, emails, and a formal notice of deficiency. The diverter was provided 7 months since the June 1st, 2020 notice of deficiency to 2018 report prior to the complaint. Enforcement staff were available during those months to provide assistance by email or telephone as referenced in the notice of deficiency. Under length of time, the 2019 report was due on April 1, 2020. The diverter filed the 2019 report on February 2nd, 2021, 8 months after the notice of deficiency and 10 months after the official due date. For corrective actions taken, the diverter did file their 2019 report after receiving the division's complaint. Lastly, under all relevant circumstances, given the diverter's non-response to the division's various forms of outreach and progressive enforcement, along with their unwillingness to file the 2019 report until a formal complaint was issued, a $2,000 penalty is recommended to ensure future compliance and to deter future reporting violations. This concludes the prosecution team's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Hearing Officer, that concludes the prosecution team's direct testimony. And if now's the appropriate time, I'd like to offer prosecution team exhibits PT1 through PT9 into the record.
Let's wait and do that after we've completed my questions and cross-examination questions. So we'll do that at the end, right? At some point before you rest. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So Ms. Reed, this is now an opportunity for you to ask any questions you might have of Mr. Coates or Mr. Kang. You will have an opportunity, as I had mentioned before, to provide testimony about your perspective and just share any other experiences you have about kind of your reasons for why we're here today. So do you have any questions you might like to ask either of the prosecution team witnesses?
No, I do not.
Okay. So I've got some questions. Mr. Coates, I'd like to start with you, and then Mr. Kang, I'll turn to you. Ms. Mullen, would you please put up exhibit PT7 on the screen, please? We'll just give Ms. Mullen, oh great, a minute to pull that up. And if we can scroll to the bottom of page 2. So we have PT7 up on the screen. This is Mr. Coates' written testimony. And at the very bottom, I'm just gonna read aloud part of Mr. Coates' testimony. So I'm reading from the bottom of page 2. This is paragraph 6. And Ms. Mullen, would you scroll to the top of, I'm just reading the word on, and then we're going to scroll to the top of page 3. So on February 21st, 2020, DMU staff, and that stands for Enforcement Section and Data Management Unit, mailed letters to all water right holders, reminding them of the impending filing deadlines for the 2019 annual reports on April 1st, 2020. The letters were mailed to the address listed for the primary owner and or the agent of record for each water right identified in ERIMS. So Mr. Coates, do you see that there at the top of page 3?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so these letters that you describe in your testimony, that this one that you sent on February 21st, was that sent? How do you send that? Is that certified mail or?
Those reminder letters were sent by the data management unit, and they are not part of the enforcement section. They are actually part of a separate section within the division, but they are sent by normal mail.
Okay, so they're not sent by certified mail, they're just sent by first class mail.
Correct.
Okay, and then who would keep a log of undeliverable mail if any of those envelopes that were sent by first class mail that this other section DMU sent, does the division keep records of undeliverable mail, or does DMU keep that?
The division, the data management unit, DMU, keeps a record of those.
Okay, and do you know if DMU has any record that the February 21st, 2020 envelope containing the letter that was sent to EW Merritt Farms was returned by the post office as undeliverable?
I do not have a record of that.
Okay, so there's no record of that either way of it being returned, I guess.
The only record that we have is that the address sent for the reminder letter, the notice of deficiency, as well as the complaint were sent to the same address. And given that a hearing was requested, the address appears to be valid.
Okay, Ms. Mullen, would you scroll down to paragraph 9 on page 3, please? Okay, great, thank you. And I'd like to look at, I guess, line 18. So it says on June 1st, 2020, division staff issued a notice of deficiency letter to water right owners and diverters equal to or above a 10 acre-foot face value who are currently out of compliance with the requisite reporting requirement. And then farther down, a line, I guess I'll say 20, the notice of deficiency was mailed to the primary owner or agent for the applicable permit or license. Do you see this, Mr. Coates?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and then the same question there. So does DMU send, or no, I guess who sent these letters out on June 1st?
The enforcement section mailed out the June 1st, 2020 notice of deficiency.
Okay, so it's a different group who mails those letters. And then are those sent by first class mail like the February letters or by a different method?
Those are sent by first class mail.
Okay. And then does the division have any record that the June 1st, 2020 envelope, the envelope containing the June 1st, 2020 letter was returned by the letter to EW Merritt Farms was returned by the post office as undeliverable?
We do not have any record of it being returned to us as undeliverable.
But you do keep a record if something were returned as undeliverable?
If something were returned as undeliverable, that would prompt us to notify DMU that a potential address change was something that needed to be looked into, and we didn't receive that, and so we continue on with the enforcement.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Coates, I'd like to ask you now about the email and social media outreach that the division undertook. So Ms. Mullen, would you please put exhibit PT 2.1 on the screen? We'll give her a second to pull that up. Oh, great. And that's 2.1, fantastic. Okay, so Ms. Reed, this is a copy of the email that it says 2019 reporting reminder at the top, and then it says Brian Coates' name and an email address, and it says Thursday, May 21st, 2020, and it gives the time. And it says who it's to, which is Water Rights Reporting Notification. And then it describes it's a reminder notification for diverters, and says that the deadline to file your 2019 annual water diversion report was April 1st, 2020. So Mr. Coates, you stated that this was sent to the Water Board's LIRIS list?
It was sent to the Water Board's, I believe it was the reporting as well as the non-reporting LIRIS list. Yes, it looks like that one is the reporting notification list.
Okay. And then you also said you sent a similar email on October 2nd, 2020, which is probably PT 2.2. We don't need to put that up there. Okay. Does the division have any record that EW Merritt Farms or Ms. Reed is a subscriber to this particular water rights reporting list?
The database that we keep for the LIRIS subscriptions is current list. At the time, we don't have a record of it because it's overwritten. But after recently checking, it looks as if there were 4 last name Merritt subscribees that were added to the list in March 2021. But at the time, since I just indicated the list is overwritten with whoever's currently subscribed, we don't have a record of it based on that search criteria with their name Merritt. It's possible that they were subscribed under a different name. I have no way to confirm that though.
Okay, and sorry, you cut out at the beginning. So can you just say the beginning portion again, which is something about the list gets rewritten?
Yes, so the LIRIS list has a current subscriptionee list. Whoever's on the list is who we mail the LIRIS emails out to. At the time these LIRISes were sent out, we do not have a snapshot indicating who the current the people on the subscription list were. What I indicated was that I did check in fairly recently that it appears as though 4 parties with the last name Merritt were added in March 2021. But if they may have, it's possible they received these LIRISes during the time they were sent out under a different name. I just don't know that.
Okay. And then is there any way that the division has keeps a record of any emails that are returned as undeliverable, that are bounced back from an invalid email address?
I believe they do. We do get generated reports of how many were successfully delivered. And in order to calculate that percentage, it stands to reason that they would know which ones were undeliverable.
So after each email that goes out, you get a report of which messages were undeliverable?
It updates it like every day or two, and success rate depending if they're bounce back. But we do get a couple of reports usually for every LIRIS email that goes out indicating the success rate and if it was delivered or not.
Okay, and I don't know if you were able to go back and check after each of these emails whether either of those reports indicated that someone with the last name of Merritt or within Merritt in the email address was undeliverable.
As I said, I didn't see, the only thing I saw within the subscription list was that the last name Merritt were added to the reporting subscription list in March 2021. Whether or not they were on the list before under a different name, I can't confirm that.
Right, and then you also can't confirm whether an email was returned. That would have been to those, if those email addresses were part of the list prior to March 2021, you also don't really have a record that those emails were returned as undeliverable. If they went
there is likely a record, but we don't think as in it.
Okay, and sorry, the connection.
So this particular one, yeah, so it appears we don't have a record of it in our exhibit list, but since these appear to have gone out within the 1-year retention policy, it's possible that there may be some history.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Mullen, would you please put PT 2.3 on the screen? Okay, we'll just take a minute to pull up. And Ms. Reed, I'll just kind of describe what we're pulling up. We're going to be looking at a screenshot of a tweet on Twitter that the division sent out on October 5th, 2020. I just wanted to ask about something on it. So that's what Ms. Mullen is pulling up, and that's going to be PT 2.3.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Mullen. So Mr. Coates, I was just curious about something in this tweet. It says the date is October 5th, 2020, and there's a picture of corn and some water, and it says, the Division of Water Rights is preparing to issue daily fines of up to $500 for 2019 water reporting violations. Right holders can report last year's water use on our site, and it gives a shortened version of the URL, and avoid penalties. And then it says, but please confirm your submittal. What does please confirm your submittal mean?
Please confirm your submittal means to log on to your report management system account that we provide on the annual reminder letters to confirm that your report was indeed received.
Okay.
Some people submit a partial report and they don't actually complete it, and we get a lot of problems there. So it's just an advisement, hey, make sure you're all caught up and everything's submitted and received. Okay.
And then does the division have any record of the followers on Twitter, the people who, is there any record of that, who would have seen this tweet?
I don't have that information.
Okay, so we don't know if Ms. Reed or another representative of EW Merritt Farms follows the water board on Twitter from your end. You don't know that?
No, I do not.
Okay, let me just check my notes. And okay, so I think that concludes my questions for Mr. Coates. And Mr. Kang, I have some questions for you as well. Ms. Mullen, would you please pull up Exhibit PT5? We're pulling up Exhibit PT5, and this, Ms. Reed, this is a copy of a query on the eRIMS database, and this was this is part of the exhibits that the prosecution team has submitted. It shows the application ID, the water right license number for the water right license that EW Merritt Farms holds. That's 4995. So Mr. Kang, my question for you is, there's a table here. It shows the years, it shows the report type, the dates that those reports were received. So the 2020 report was received February 2nd, 2021, submitted electronically. The column, it's the 6th column to the right, it says fee required, and then there's a column next to that says fee paid. So the fee required column says yes, and it says yes in that entire column for years 2011 through 2020. And then for fee paid, it says no under all of those in that column. I was just curious, what does that involve? What is the fee required, and then the fact that there hasn't been a fee paid?
To be honest, I do not know exactly how that field is generated, but if you were to ask for my educated guess, it would be some delinquent annual fee that is due within the account for that license. So it may not necessarily correlate to that year, but it may be a delinquent annual fee or some penalty or interest for that account.
Okay, so based on your experience, it appears to be some kind of delinquent fee for this account.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question there?
Yes, you can ask a question.
Does that have what year? I mean, is it? I'm assuming that it shows that this is still delinquent.
My question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm assuming this is the water rights fee associated for what year?
Well, I was just describing the exhibit. It shows 2012 through 2020, and then it says fee required and fee paid. So, and it indicates that a fee hasn't been paid for 2012 through 2020. And I was just asking Mr. Kang what that is, but he explained his best estimate based on his experience was that it was a delinquent fee.
That it's still delinquent, though. I mean, there's been an issue once again with us receiving the billings for the water rights fee, and they, to my knowledge, they have been paid. They have all been paid late because of the wrong address that was on record, and we've paid penalties and interest every year. And I hope it's cleared up now.
Okay, let's.
So I was just curious as to what year is still delinquent, if that's what is showing there.
Okay, let's see. Well, Ms. Reed, let's make a note. Can you make a note to repeat that testimony once you're under oath for your particular portion of the hearing? You did ask a question about the years and whether fees had been paid. I was just kind of asking this question about PT5 out of curiosity. I don't know that this is something the Division of Water Rights, I think, will follow up with you if this is something they need to address. But I was just curious about what I was seeing on the screen from the PT's exhibits.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kang, could you spoke about the importance of these annual reports for the Water Board's essential functions, one of them being conducting efficient, fair, and accurate drought management. Can you talk a little bit more about how filing the annual reports is specifically helpful for drought management?
Yes, these reports help staff as well as managers decide when and where to curtail based on historical use of water, because we do not have any other data available to make those decisions. So these reports are used to gather that information and assess how much water there is available. Recently, the board has released a tool which is directly linked to this data and is available for the public to review as well, which looks at water available based on years that we've received data from the reports. I believe those are based on 2018. So the reason why it's based on 2018 is because of that's our most complete and most recent year. We're still not fully compliant with all of our data, of course, but we do use that data to look at what water is available and what water is being used. And of course, every year is not the same. So the more data we have, the better we can make our decisions.
Okay. And then I had another couple questions based on things not in your written testimony, but things you just testified about. So Ms. Mullen, would you please put up PT 6.4? And Ms. Reed, this is another screenshot from the PT exhibits, and it says ERIM's party list, and this shows the history of all the people who have owned the water right that license 4995 before you. And so if we can pull up PT 6.4, I wanted to ask Mr. Kang a question about that one. Ms. Mullen. Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Mullen. Okay, So, Mr. Kang, what you had mentioned very briefly in your testimony, and then I noticed it here, there's a column, so it shows the screenshot shows the name of the primary owner. So here it says EW Merritt Farms GP, and it says it's the primary owner. And then there's a column for mail receiver, and there's a letter Y under mail receiver. What does mail receiver mean?
Yes, mail receiver is the field that that the division uses for its mail out to identify its mailouts to. So the Y is simply a yes, and an N is simply a no. In addition to that, only the active owner is identified as the mail receiver. So it shows that other primary owners are mail receivers, but when the mailouts are done, those are not selected for the mailout.
Okay, and then the address for mail receiver, is that address what the division has in ERIMS, or what is the address that's used to populate the mail receiver field?
When you if you click into that party ID number there, it will take you to the party ID for that EW Merritt Farms GP, and it would have been whatever address has been assigned to that party ID at the time of the mail out.
Okay. My last question for you is, you had mentioned the amount of staff costs being a factor in the $2,000 recommended administrative civil liability here. Have you quantified the staff costs that you have incurred to take this enforcement action against EW Merritt Farms, or do you have more information about what those are?
The staff costs were not quantified. This case was simply qualitatively analyzed and looked at the 1055.3 considerations that were mentioned in the slide, which are to look at the harm and the nature and persistence of the violation, length, and the diverter's corrective actions and other relevant circumstances. So no, they were not quantified.
Okay. Those are all of the questions that I have for the PT's witnesses. Mr. Torianen, do you have any redirect questions for Mr. Coates or Mr. Kang?
Yes, I do. If I could just, it'll be very brief. And I have questions for both, if I may. First question is for Mr. Coates. And this is regarding the Lyris emails and the tweets that were sent out. I would just like you to describe, why does the division send those out?
There we go. So the division sent Lyris's emails and in some years postcards as a form of outreach to encourage compliance with the reporting requirements.
Is the division required to send those?
No, we are not.
Where does the requirement to file an annual report come from?
So the annual report requirement comes from the California Code of Regulations, in this case, a license, section 929.
Okay. One more question on a slightly different portion of the testimony. I believe you may have also mentioned drought management as well, and we heard Mr. Kang respond to the hearing officer's questions. Do you have anything you would add regarding the use of annual report data in water rights management in general, or for drought in particular?
Yeah, so for respect to for non-drop periods, the data is needed in order to make more effective our ability to determine for new permits or registrations. A lot of the water rights that we have may have a face value that greatly exceeds the actual reported use. And so when we come into drought period, the data is very effective in delaying any shortage notices that may go out, because we want to know what's actually being used versus what they could use. And in the case of parties that don't submit their reported use data, if they're a fairly large diverter in a sub-watershed, that may really hamper the division's ability to issue confident water allocations, because if we don't have the data for that particular year, we may have to go to a prior year, as Mr. Kang alluded to, using the 2018 data versus potentially a more representative 2019 data. And even in the event that we don't have good 2018 data, we may have to go even further back. And the drawback there is we need the water years to be representative of current conditions as much as possible for us to have confidence in our decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. Mr. Kang, I have just one or two questions for you, and I'd like to refer to your Exhibit 6, although I may not ask it to be brought up for specific pages just yet. What is the address for EW Merritt Farms that the complaint was sent to?
Yeah, the complaint was sent to the 22211 Road 260 in Lindsay, California 93247.
And why would it have gone to that address?
That address was the address on file at the time the water right was transferred to EW Merritt Farms, and it is also the address on the grant deed in PT 6.1.
And why is the grant deed address relevant? Or maybe I can rephrase that if possible. What does the division do with the information contained on the grant deed?
The division, I believe, takes the information on the grant deed and assigns that address to the water right on record based on the address on the grant deed.
And has the address for that was on file at the time of the administrative civil liability complaint, has that been changed?
Yes, the address has changed. And the new address submitted as PT 6.3 is now addressing the EW Merritt Farms party ID as the 11188 Road 192 in Porterville, California 93257.
Now at this point, and I see where on the screen is Exhibit 6.4. Ms. Mullen, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up to, I think it's the prior page, 6.3. And for Ms. Reed's benefit, I'll just describe that this is 6.3 is a division, State Water Resources Control Board Division of Water Rights Contact Information Update Form. Mr. Kang, is there a date indication on that sheet that might tell us what date the division received this change form?
Yes, if you see toward the upper right corner in light blue, light purple stamping is SWRCB-DWR 21 March 3rd AM 11:12. indicating that the form was received on March 3rd of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Kang. I apologize, but one more question for Mr. Coates, if I may. Mr. Coates, who is responsible if a water right license holder changes the address at which they would like to receive their mail? Whose obligation is it to make sure that the division has the correct address?
The water right license holder.
Okay, thank you. No further questions?
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Reed, this is now a chance for you to ask any follow-up questions regarding the matters that I asked about during my questions of Mr. Coates or Mr. Kang, or Mr. Toriainen's redirect questions of Mr. Coates or Mr. Kang. And again, you'll have a chance to provide testimony once you're under oath, but do you have any questions for either of them about the topics we've just covered?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Toriainen, would you like to offer the prosecution team's evidence, exhibits into evidence?
Yes, thank you. At this time, the prosecution team offers exhibits PT1 through PT9 for submission into the record for this proceeding.
Okay. Ms. Reed, do you have any objections?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right, so exhibits PT1 through PT9 are admitted into evidence. Okay, I'm looking at the time. It's 2 o'clock. I think we'll just, we could take a break, but I think we'll just keep going unless anyone needs a break, but I'm not hearing that. Okay, Ms. Reed, would you like to share some opening remarks? And again, this is a chance to provide arguments or kind of a general overview of your position, and then you will have a chance to, I'll swear you in and you'll have a chance to provide your testimony. So would you like to provide an opening statement?
I don't believe so. I just, you know, I have just a statement about what I believe, you know, fell through the cracks over the years.
Well,
And
that sounds, let me get you sworn in and then we'll go ahead and hear that statement. And I can't see you, but please raise your right hand.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And as I did for the prosecution team, I'm going to give you 30 minutes to provide your testimony. So please proceed.
Well, I don't think it'll take 30 minutes. You know, as I've stated earlier, has been a, you know, the address was not correct. And while one of the gentlemen was speaking, I do have the grant deed in front of me, and I see where the address is incorrect on the grant deed. And I was not a part of this purchase at the time that Merritt Farms purchased the property, so it's, you know, that fell through the cracks. The property, there is a residence at this location in which one of our employees lives at, and over the years I would get the billings for the water rights fee most of the time after the fact, you know, after the due date. And like I stated earlier, you know, we have paid penalties and interest on these fees, but we've always paid them. And like I said, most of the time they've been late. I don't have a tremendous amount of interaction with an employee that may live there right now. The house is vacant, and the mail in our area is, you know, there's a lot of mail theft and all that goes on. So I don't know whether he was, and I realize it's not his responsibility to get Merritt Farms mail to me. However, he did when he would receive it. So anyhow, all that stuff fell through the cracks, and then it went, you know, when I realized that there was a report. I mean, I do have oh goodness, I can't even. this is the civil liability complaint for failure to file the 2019 report dated January 15th, 2021. I did receive that. I don't have the date when I got it into my hands, but it went to the 22211 Road 260 address, and I believe it was shortly after that that we did request the address change, and I'm glad to hear that it has in fact been made. So I'm just stating that our failure to file these reports has been that it was very intermittent, that we received, I don't remember receiving mail or emails concerning the reports themselves. We received the billings for the water rights not on a timely basis, not on a timely basis in order to get it paid on a timely basis, but we would eventually receive them and pay those water right fees. So anyhow, I hope everything has been cleared up and the address is now correct and we will receive things on a timely basis. I have someone much younger than me in the office that can do these computer-generated reports. I'm not real familiar with that. I don't tweet. I do have an email address. I don't know if it's on file, and I will follow up with this, I believe you're calling it a Lyris email notification, to see which one of the Merritts or family members that have been added, their email address has been added for email notifications. But I don't tweet, and I don't do a lot of computer-generated stuff, and I apologize.
That's okay. Okay, anything else you wanted to add as part of your testimony today?
Well, I mean, I jotted down, we didn't receive any of the tweets, did not receive any of the emails, did not receive the PT3 that was dated June 1st. I believe that one of the gentlemen said that went out via, first-class mail. The February 21st, 20 notice, PT7, I didn't receive. So those are the ones that I noted. That I had no knowledge that all of those went out.
Okay. Anything else before I ask Mr. Torianen if he has some cross-examination questions for you?
Oh, well, one statement I did have is, like, when I get the water rights fee billing statement, it's billed through the State of California Board of Equalization. And I believe that on the correspondence that I'm looking at, the billing that I'm looking at in front of me, has a Jonathan Rowe gentleman's name and the phone number here. And if I am remembering correctly, when I would call that number, this person, it went to someone at the Board of Equalization. Well, they couldn't help me with anything associated with the water rights fees and or the fact that the address wasn't correct on there. And he's, I can't even remember if he gave me a phone number or gave me a website or whatever to contact someone, but it's not real clear. Apparently, the Board of Equalization collects the water rights fees for the State Water Resource Control Board, if I understand this correctly. So it's a lot of moving parts and somewhat confusing.
Okay.
I think that's all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Torianen, do you have any cross-examination questions for Ms. Reed? Oh, and I think you're on mute, Mr. Torianen.
Very sorry. It's been long enough. You'd think I would be used to Zoom process by now, but I do appreciate the leniency. So, Ms. Reed, I just have a few questions for you. Does EW Merritt Farms have any other water rights?
Yes, we do.
And are those, what types of water rights are they?
You know, I believe they're diversion water rights. I am somewhat unfamiliar with this. When we bought, and I say we loosely, I was not active with the purchase of either one of these properties. The water rights were already established with these two separate properties. The one that we're speaking of today, I believe Merritt Farms purchased in 2012. The other one was purchased in maybe 2013 or 14. And I have someone much younger than me who does these online reportings. It's confusing to me, but I believe they're considered diversion rights. Is that correct? I don't know. The one that we're speaking of today, the gentleman, the party that owned this acreage used this for kind of a recreational type facility, petting zoo. People could, you know, rent the property to have events there. We use this property for grazing land. There is the only water that is sometimes in this catch pond. I'm going to call it a catch pond for lack of a better description. Is water, it's runoff from the rain, which we desperately need and haven't had too much of the last few years. So for the most part, that pond is dry, or reservoir is dry year after year, and it's only used for for cattle water. The other ranch, there is a if I understand it correctly, there's a stream that runs through it, and the cattle will water in that stream. We divert no water at all. But there is a stream that runs through this other property, and I don't know if it, I doubt whether it runs, especially on a year like this, I doubt whether it runs year-round, just because the water is, it's not as plentiful as we would like to see it. But once again, that water is used for watering cattle, not for diverting it for any other purpose.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. So you've mentioned, first of all, let me ask, if I were to use the terms riparian right or pre-19 appropriative right, and in conjunction with those terms, annual statement or annual supplemental statement, does that sound familiar to you?
Riparian sounds familiar, the other doesn't.
Okay. And you mentioned two properties. Does Merritt Farms have other properties?
Yes, we own other property.
And are there water rights, whether riparian or otherwise, on those other properties?
I don't believe so.
Okay. For the other riparian rights or other rights that you might have, does EW Merritt Farms submit annual reports or annual supplemental statements for those rights?
Yes, we do.
And who submits those?
Jacob Shepard.
And who's Mr. Shepard?
He's my nephew that works in the office with me.
Oh, okay. And to your knowledge, did Mr. Shepard submit the 2019 reports for any of the other rights besides the one at issue here, which is license 4995? Did Mr. Shepard submit 2019 annual reports for any other rights held by Merritt Farms?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, thank you. I just want to confirm that you did receive the administrative civil liability complaint, right?
The one dated January 15th?
That's right.
Yes, I did get that.
Okay.
Our employee, he received it at his address and got it to me.
Okay.
And none of this, I mean, he, to my knowledge, ever opened anything this is, to determine whether this was like an important piece of mail to get to me.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that the grant deed might have an incorrect address on it. The grant deed is.
I had not noticed that. I mean, my dad purchased this property, like I said, in 2012, I believe, and I know that I looked at paperwork after the transaction was made. I didn't realize that it had an incorrect address. At that time, I did not realize that there was a water rights. I've kind of read through this in preparation for today, and I have not come across any information, in this purchase that indicates a water, any type of reporting or a water rights fee or anything like that. But it was while one of the gentlemen was talking just a few minutes ago that I saw where on the grant deed it does in fact have the incorrect address as opposed to my mailing address here in Porterville.
Okay, and just for clarification, the address listed on the grant deed is 22211 Road 260,
Yes,
Lindsay, California, 93247. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Do you receive the county property tax bills at that address?
I believe they were coming to that, and to my knowledge, that has not been corrected as of yet.
Okay, so it sounds like you do receive the property tax bills there in Lindsay.
You know what? I would have to double check on that. I don't know.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
Presumably, though, the same system that you described earlier, where the resident or employee at that Lindsay address would forward important mail to you in Porterville. Is that correct?
He would actually deliver it to another nephew that works on our, that manages the cattle ranch, who would eventually get it to me. It's not like I see these gentlemen. I don't see them on a daily basis. And over the last 10 years, I think we've had, I believe we've had 2 different parties live in that residence, and it's vacant right now. So I'm glad that you have reminded me about or asked me about the property taxes, because I will follow through and see where those are being delivered. Because if nobody's living there, I won't get them. I won't get them.
When there is a resident there, do they forward all mail to you?
They don't forward it through the mail. Where this location is, he lived, it's about 5 miles from what we consider our headquarters for that area. And I live our office here at 11188 is about 30 miles, from that location. And so it's just, he would bring the mail to the foreman at the headquarters, who happens to be my nephew, who would then bring it to me. But it wasn't, I don't see him every day. I might see him once a week. And I believe that I would get the mail on a fairly timely basis, but, I just don't think with all of these pieces of mail that it appears that didn't get into my hands, either it got thrown away at his residence or he never received it. So, not the best mail system.
But it does sound like there is a system for forwarding you business mail, or at least delivering it to you through the channels you described.
Yes.
And last question, did you try and contact the water board to update your address at any point before you received the administrative civil liability complaint?
You know, like I said, I had, when we received the billing for the water right, the fees, I had spoken to this gentleman. I'm just going to throw out Jonathan Rowe's name because that was the name and the phone number provided on this billing, and he in turn would refer me to a different phone number if I remember correctly. And it was just never a real clear process to me on how to get things changed.
Okay.
And I don't recall ever, you know, like I'm not even certain that there's a phone number on the water resource correspondence that I've gotten. You know, it just seems like everybody does things via email more and more every day,
Sure.
or every year, and people my age kind of sometimes fall through the cracks. I'm sorry to say.
And that's not a problem. Thank you for that answer. One follow-up though, I just want to confirm that the person you tried to contact was listed on the fee statement, and that fee statement, I think you described earlier, was sent by the Board of Equalization. So presumably that person that you tried to contact is an employee with the Board of Equalization. Is that correct?
That I understand, yes, but I don't, you know, on this one payment, this payment that I'm looking at, and I've only got one here in front of me, that was mailed to the 22211 Road 260 address. I don't have any notes on here, you know, with a phone number for someone at the California Water Board office. So I'm assuming that the Board of Equalization collects the, you know, the fees for the water right, and then in turn forwards it on to another aspect of the, you know, of the state.
Okay. I keep saying last question. This really will be, did you submit the contact information update form in March?
My nephew did for me.
Your nephew did. Okay.
My nephew, Jacob.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Reed. I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
So you and Mr. Torianen were talking about the kind of mail delivery system from this property to your, I guess, the headquarters. How often, if you could guess, were you receiving that mail? You said it was from when there's a resident there. When there's a resident, then the resident takes it to your nephew, and then the nephew takes it to you. Is that every week? Is that twice a week? Is that once a month?
No, it would be, you know, the water rights fee was the only thing that would come to this address that was addressed to Merritt Farms, other than possibly the taxes. And I will do a follow-up to see what the mailing address is there, you know, because I'm not certain whether we receive the taxes here at our business office, or if they were, for a time being, going over to the, you know, to our employee's house. So, you know, we would get this billing once a year, I believe, and that's when he would deliver it to us. I mean, it was periodically. And then, you know, we received this in January. I've got some random stuff that we received over the years, but it, you know, maybe once a year, twice a year at the most. And most of it coming from the State of California Board of Equalization.
So once or twice a year, you were getting correspondence from the Board of Equalization, and there was no other mail that you were receiving. I'm just trying to figure out how frequently you were checking the mail at this address, at the Road 260 address.
You know, I personally did not check the mail. He would bring the mail to work with him. when he received something, he would bring the mail to work with him and either give it to me directly. When I lived at the headquarters, which I moved from that location about 3 years ago, now he most recently has given it to his foreman, one of my nephews, who in turn would then bring it to the office.
And then how often would you see that foreman? Were you seeing him every day?
No. I see him once a week, once every 2 weeks sometimes.
Okay. And then I wanted to switch gears a little bit just to get some more background. And you've discussed your cattle operation a little bit, but are you irrigating anything on the property, or are you just stock watering cows?
It's just stock water. We are not irrigating anything. No, we have no pastures up in the on our grazing land.
Okay, and then we're not going to pull them up because I'll just describe them. The reports of licensee. So this is what your nephew filled out, but these are just sort of general questions. So your nephew had indicated that there's 10 cows on the property. Is that the size of the cattle on this particular property associated with license 4995?
I don't have that information. And all I can do is average about how many cows you have per acre. I believe that particular property is about 100 acres. And, on an average, I would say that would be about a normal average. There could possibly be, if they are gathering cattle, there could possibly be 25 cows or 100 cows that are being held there, for a very short period of time and then worked and turned back out, But it's, we have very little feed and very little water there. Okay.
It looks like from the report of licensee that this is a 22-acre property. So does that change those amounts that you just shared with that there could be anywhere between 25 and 100 cows at kind of various stages of your work with them?
Well, we would not have 20 cows on there for 22 acres, like for very long, because there's not that wouldn't sustain 20 cows.
Okay, so if it's not 100, because I think earlier it said it was 100 acres, but this is 1/5 the size. So you've just explained that you wouldn't have.
If I'm remembering correctly, that the entire purchase was approximately 100 acres, where this water right is maybe considered on 22 acres, maybe.
You're saying maybe this is 22 acres where this water right is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the reports of licensee that are being.
What I was referring to, the 100 acres, was the entire property, if I remember correctly. At the time of the purchase, it was more than 20 acres. But where the water right is, and I'd have to go back and double check, to be honest with you, where the water right's located. If you've got down there that it's 22 acres, I'm not going to argue with that because I don't know. But for, a rule of thumb, I believe it is 1 cow per 100 acres, like for sustaining it.
Okay.
But cattle are moved in and out during the course of, during different seasons, during, like if they're gathering cattle from adjoining pastures and trying to bring them down into a certain area to work them, to wean the calves, to do all that stuff, and then they turn them back out and push them back into other pastures. There is the possibility that there could be, a number of cows concentrated for a short period of time. And obviously we would have to feed hay. Well, this year the grass condition over there is no grass, and obviously we don't want to have a whole lot of cows in a concentrated area where you have to feed a whole lot of expensive hay to.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pushed back up into higher countries, or they are culled, and we reduce our herd because there is no feed and water is scarce.
Okay. And you had mentioned something, so you just mentioned the water is scarce, and you had also mentioned that you're not diverting any water, and that's also what the reports of licensees say, that even though you have 10 cows or more, or some amount at different times, varying amounts of cows on this property, you're not diverting any water. So I just wanted to confirm that is still the case, that you're not diverting water despite the cattle, the varying sized cattle operation that you have.
No. Like I stated earlier, it's a reservoir, a catch pond, however you want to term this body of. Right now, it's dirt. There is no water in there to be a body of water, and so when there is water in there, gates are opened up to where the cattle can go in there and water, and then they move back out into other pastures to feed. But right now, there's no water and not much feed.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's no water being diverted.
Okay. And also no water being used too, because that's also what your reports of licensee are stating, that no water is being used.
Well, you mean natural rainfall water being used?
I think water under this water right license.
Okay, well, does that water right license account for water that comes from a well? That could possibly be, that would feed the residents there and also feed a water trough?
So are the cows and the residents using groundwater then, as far as you understand it?
At times when there's cattle in there. I don't believe there's any cattle there, and there's nobody living in the house right now. So there should be very little water being used from a well source. But I thought that I was under the understanding that this water right is the water that's in the reservoir that is water rainfall.
Oh.
To be honest with you, I don't know where this water comes from that we have a water right to. I don't know. It's rainfall, or it is a well that supplies water to, I believe it supplies water to a water trough and also to the residents there.
Okay. I have one more question to ask, and I will put up an exhibit, but I'm going to describe this to you to just ask if you remember this. So Ms. Mullen, would you please put up the report of licensee for 2017? And Ms. Reed, this is the report of licensee that Jake Shepard submitted on behalf of EW Merritt Farms. The date that it was submitted was October 2nd, 2018. And Ms. Mullen's put this on the screen. Thank you very much. And I'll just ask you, so this is kind of what we've been talking about where you're declaring your water use. And the first table here, it says number 1, project abandoned. And then it says the project has been abandoned and I request revocation of my water right license. And then on the right side of the screen, I believe it was Mr. Shepard who filled this out. He has indicated yes. So I wanted to ask if you've remembered anything about a project, about requesting revocation of your water right. Do you remember that at all?
I do have that form in front of me, and I am, it's been a couple of years ago. I know that this, what you want to term the project or project abandoned, was like I said, the previous owner of this property had not residential, but he had a place there where people could hold events and do that kind of stuff. I believe he used this this body of water, and where the water came from, I don't know, because there's not much water in there since we've used it for cattle. There's not much water in there. But he stocked it with fish. People could go fishing. People could pet his little llamas and all this other stuff that he had there, and they used the property they used this area for recreational use. So maybe that's what is, the project of it being used for recreational use. I'm not real familiar with this report of license for 2017. I have always had in the back of my mind the water rights that we have associated with this ranch. To be honest with you, I don't know where the water comes from if it's not rainfall, because there is, there's no streams that flow into here that, as I understand it. So if you have a water right that's associated with this property, is that correct? Is that how this works? The water right is associated with the property?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Then do some waters flow from someone else's property up or from the mountains up high, much higher than this? Or is it the possibility that the previous owner received water from one of the water districts to stock his fish pond there? Or if he filled it with his well, does he have to report that? See, these have been questions that I've never had answered in my head as to where does the water come from. Now, this other piece of property that we spoke about, that it's been less than 10 years ago that we purchased this other piece of property that already had water rights, and I was aware of the fact that there were water rights associated with this other piece of property. And at the time that we purchased it, it was all done on paper reporting and everything. And then at some point, it's been switched over to all online reporting, which I don't do well with. I think you guys already understand that. But that makes a little more sense in my head, because the water is like this stream that comes from somewhere at a higher elevation than what our property is, and it just flows down, maybe goes into the Tule. I'm not sure where that water winds up, to be honest with you. And I can picture that in my head as far as diverting from that stream to irrigate with or whatever, and the need to measure how much water we're actually using, which we don't irrigate any of the pastures on the cattle ranch. So it's all being consumed by cattle. Over at this other place, like I said, though, I think that it is all rainfall. I don't know where the water source would come from to feed this, small fish pond that this other gentleman had that apparently had the water right to that property. I don't know. So your question is me familiar with this form. Jacob Shepard did it. I do see here that that we request for our water right license to be revoked, but I don't know if that was ever done. I don't know.
Okay. Well, that was my next question. Did anyone from the Division of Water Rights ever contact you after you requested revocation of the water right?
Not to my knowledge. I don't remember anybody, being contacted by anyone about, concerning this.
Okay.
And this this doesn't look like the other reports on the water, the diversion that he has done. So I'm not familiar with this, to be honest with you.
Okay. So that concludes my questions. And so, Ms. Reed, do you have any, it's a little bit kind of funny to do it this way, but do you have any further, I'll call them redirect comments you would like to make kind of based on the questions you were asked on cross-examination and then the questions I just asked you? Anything else you wanted to add?
No, not really. I did want to ask about the delinquent fees that you were speaking about here a little while ago, and I'm assuming that I can call the Board of Equalization and give them the account numbers and stuff, or is that would that be the correct place for me to go to find out if there's any delinquent fees, and also where would be a good place for me to find out if Merritt Farms is on this LIRIS email notification list?
Well, I'm just the hearing officer. I'm going to maybe ask Mr. Kang or Mr. Coates to provide that information, or maybe they can follow up with you after this hearing to, I don't know how that would work.
Okay.
Okay, they're gonna, I think they will contact you after. Let's see, so anything else, Ms. Reed?
I don't believe so.
Okay, Mr. Toriainen, any follow-up questions regarding my questions or Ms. Reed's redirect comments?
I think I just want to clarify. Yes, thank you, hearing officer. I think I just want to clarify from Ms. Reed. Is it your understanding that you've been delinquent on past fees for this water right license?
Well, someone mentioned that, you know, in these columns, in one of the exhibits that you had there, and I believe it was the hearing officer, she was asking questions about the delinquent fees for this water right for the years 2012 through 2020. And I just, you know, I would like to talk to someone and discuss that and see, you know, since we've had this address mix-up, I thought that all of the fees had been paid at different times, and like I stated earlier, usually late, you know, with a interest and or penalty that was associated with it. But if something in one of those exhibits is still showing that there are delinquent fees, then I would kind of like to get to the bottom of it and get it resolved.
Okay, so it's your understanding that you don't have any delinquent fees?
Not to my knowledge, but if the hearing officer there on one of the exhibits, I believe she said that it appeared that there were delinquent fees still on this water right.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Reed, these would be great questions to follow up with the Division of Water Rights. My staff is telling me that all the fees have been paid, and I do want to clarify my question was just more for me to understand how the Division of Water Rights keeps this data and what this column meant. And Mr. Kang had explained what he thought that particular column meant. I wasn't suggesting that there was anything delinquent. It was more my curiosity, and my staff has confirmed that it appears to them from their search that the fees have been paid, but I would suggest that you follow up with the Division of Water Rights, and there are phone numbers for the best folks to reach for that. And I guess that would be on the ACL complaint that you have. That was the January 15th complaint. There is a phone number there that you can call, and I believe an email address as well.
Okay, I did not see a phone number here. I'll double check on that though, because
okay.
There's got to be someplace, you know, where. Oh yes, I do see one here. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay. So now is the time for some closing remarks, closing arguments. So Mr. Toriainen, would you like to have a few minutes break, or are you ready to proceed with closing comments?
Thank you, hearing officer. I would first like to have a brief recess so I can discuss with my clients the possibility of us requesting some brief rebuttal. And I can generally describe what the scope of that rebuttal might be just so that you get an idea of, whether or not it's worth it to let us have this recess. We're prepared to discuss both the fees history, which, based on a statement you just made a moment or two ago, that your staff has confirmed that the fees are current. And I'm not sure if that includes a confirmation that the fees have essentially never been late or not. And if the answer to that last statement is negative, we would be prepared to provide rebuttal regarding the timeliness of their fee statement for this license. That would be point one of rebuttal. Point two would be regarding the history of the annual reports for all the various other water rights that EW Merritt Farms possesses and their timely submittal. So I guess my request is for a brief recess to discuss to what extent and how we may ask for rebuttal and possibly rebuttal exhibits.
Okay, yes, we can do a brief recess for you to confer with your clients about those issues.
Okay.
How much time do you need? Does 15 minutes work?
Oh, that would be plenty. Yes.
Okay.
And it's probably a good amount for a break for the participants as well. So I appreciate that amount of time.
Okay, so we are going to take a recess. We will reconvene at 3 o'clock, 14 minutes from now. So I would recommend you can just turn your camera off. You don't need to log out, just stay on. Ms. Reed, do you want to just set the phone down or you can recall in again? It's up to you, whatever you're more comfortable with. But we will resume in 13 minutes now, 3 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Okay. Looks like we are all back from a short break. And before the recess, Mr. Toriainen had asked for a recess to figure out whether he could offer some rebuttal exhibits. So Mr. Toriainen, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Any further details about kind of what you conferred with your clients about?
So we did confer as to whether or not to request rebuttal, and the prosecution team will not be requesting rebuttal.
Okay, fair enough. Are you prepared to present a closing statement?
Yes, we are. Is now the time?
Pardon me?
Now's the time for that?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The Division of Water Rights Prosecution Team thanks the hearing office for the opportunity to present this matter. This is ultimately a matter of supporting the water rights ability to effectively administer the water rights system in the state. Unless license holders such as the respondent take their reporting obligations seriously and fully comply with them, the Water Board will be left with incomplete information. All of the water rights programs will suffer as a result. And I want to stress, it does not matter if a water right holder uses their full licensed amount, something less than their full licensed amount, or none of their licensed amount. The board still needs their diversion and use information in order to manage the system. The Division of Water Rights should not have to issue an administrative civil liability complaint in order for license holders to submit their diversion and use data. Even though the respondent here submitted their data after the complaint, they should be punished for their delay. And they should be punished in order to provide a deterrent to potentially similarly situated parties. For all of the reasons discussed today, the prosecution team respectfully asks that you impose the administrative civil liability against the respondent in the amount of $2,000. And that is based on an application of the statutory consideration factors in Water Code Section 1055.3 and 1848D. I would like to also point out that EW Merritt Farms knew, or they should have known, that the annual report was due. We've heard that they do receive mail, and they do receive the mail sent to the address that was formerly on file as the mailing address for this license, the same address which the complaint was sent to, and for which we received a timely hearing request. I also would like to point out that under California regulations adopted by the State Water Board, the burden is on the right holder to keep their addresses up to date in our water rights system. And I would just, for the sake of the record, we'll point out a few citations to the code, the most relevant being 23 Cal Code of Regulations, Section 915, which places a burden on license holders and permit holders to submit their updated address information. And that section itself references sections 830 and 831 of Title 23 of Cal Code Regs, which states perhaps even more clearly that affirmative duty to update the Water Board for their records. I would also like to point out that Ms. Reed did indicate that the pond, which maybe is the project, is still being used, and that, as is already in the hearing office's record for this matter, the statements, annual reports for a number of years prior to, well, including 2020 and 2019, but then prior to 2018, I believe the years are 2016 through 2013 are in the record. They were all submitted on the same day, February 2nd of this year, 2021, after EW Merritt Farms had received the complaint. That indicates, and I believe the hearing office should consider, that is a sign that they intend to continue using the project, particularly since they submitted information for 2019 and 2020. That concludes the prosecution team's opening statement. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reed, do you have any closing comments you'd like to offer today?
Well, my, maybe not a real good excuse about the address mix-up and not being real familiar with these reports and the transition from paper reports, and I'm referring to the other water rights reporting that we have done in the last, when we first acquired that property, the first couple of years, it was done via paper, a paper report, which I'm more comfortable doing because most of my life, that's what kind of reporting I've done. So I do apologize for not keeping up with the times, apparently. But as I recall, those reports were sent to us via mail, and then so that was just seemed to be an easier transition. This water right report done on this particular this project, if you want to call it that, I'm still not real clear on, not necessarily on the reason why the report needs to be done, and I would like to visit with someone at a much greater length at a different time than now, as to get clarity in my brain about it. We're reporting rainfall apparently, and so it just is still not clear in my head, and I did not realize that there was a report associated with that for all those years, and so that's the reason why all of those years were done at the same time in 2021. That's my reasoning for it, and I don't have much else to add for it. I'm asking for a little bit of grace, and I'll do better moving forward. And I do have a younger person who is now doing these reports via the internet.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you both for your presentations. Oh,
Ms.
yes.
Nyes, I had one other question that I'd forgotten about because it happened at the very beginning. I want to confirm, I've been during the hearing trying to confirm with our administrative staff that the mailing of the hearing exhibits did go out, and they went out they should have gone out at the same time as the mailing to the hearing office. And I just wanted to verify that the hearing office received that mailing.
Yes, the hearing office.
Okay, and we sent that via regular mail the same way we did to the Merritt Farms address. Okay, that's all. I just was hoping to get that clarification.
I believe my address at that time when the hearing information went out had already been changed, because I am now receiving it at my business office as opposed to at the physical location.
And just to confirm, I did have our exhibits, all of our filings that we submitted last week were sent to the address that's on the service list, which I believe is the Porterville address.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we have not seen any indication that it's been returned to us as return to sender or anything.
Oh, you mean the exhibits? No, I haven't. But like I stated earlier, the mail system is very poor, and sometimes it takes a week it takes a while for us to get it. I am curious though, because I've been on the website for the water board website, and I'm not. Oh, there was. I take that back. I apologize. There is a phone number there that I can call and get more specific information, maybe a little more clarity. I believe that was in one of the mailings that I received. So I apologize for that.
Okay.
And thank you. I apologize for that interruption. It was just a last minute remembering that I had. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's fine. We're glad we got it clarified. So we are going to wrap up this hearing now. So as I mentioned at the beginning of today's hearing, my colleagues and I will be preparing a proposed order in this matter. This matter is now deemed submitted. By law, we are required to complete this proposed order within 90 days after the matter is submitted, so 90 days from today. After we complete this proposed order, I will transmit it to the clerk of the board with copies to the parties, and then we will transmit copies to the AHO email list and post it on the AHO webpage and the AHO FTP site. So that's the last word here. Thank you all for your cooperation today, and this hearing is.
Can I ask a question? Will stuff come through the regular mail, correspondence as to the outcome of this, or is it all posted?
No,
on the internet?
well, I believe you've requested service by mail, so we will submit it by mail.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.